Jake loved the night shift. Quiet, peaceful, uncomplicated. Until an organized crime syndicate decided to take over his store. He'd earned the nickname Bulldog 16 years ago for never backing down. Tonight wouldn't be any different. "Kids," he said in a calm voice, "you picked the wrong night." Before we dive into this incredible story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if this story moves you, make sure you subscribe, because tomorrow I have something very special planned for you. Quick Stop Market at 2:15 a.m. was exactly what Jake Thompson had come to appreciate about working the graveyard shift. The 24-hour convenience store sat on the corner of Industrial Boulevard and 5th Street, in a part of town that was rough around the edges, but not actively dangerous. At 42, Jake had been working nights for 3 years, ever since he'd moved to the city looking for the kind of peace that only came with anonymity and simple work. The store was clean, well-lit, and stocked with everything shift workers, insomniacs, and emergency situations required. Coffee, energy drinks, basic groceries, and the kind of late-night necessities that kept urban life functioning. Jake maintained it with systematic precision that most people attributed to good work ethic rather than 16 years of military training and attention to detail and operational readiness. Tonight's customers were typical for a Tuesday. Maria Santos, a nurse heading home from her hospital shift, had picked up milk and coffee. Tommy Chun, a college student pulling an all-nighter, was working through calculus problems at one of the small tables while nursing an energy drink. Near the back of the store, elderly Mr. Peterson browsed the pharmacy section, looking for nighttime cold medicine. Jake moved through his routine with practiced efficiency, restocking shelves, monitoring security cameras, maintaining visual contact with all customers while appearing to focus on routine tasks. Positioning behind the counter provided clear sight lines to every area of the store, every entrance and exit. Old habits from his previous career that had become second nature in civilian life. What customers didn't realize was that Jake's approach to convenience store management had been shaped by 16 years of Marine Force Recon training in threat assessment, urban warfare, and what his old unit had called defensive positioning. The store's layout, his workstation arrangement, even his shift schedule had been selected with tactical considerations that most night shift workers never thought about. At exactly 2:23 a.m., Jake's threat assessment protocols activated. 4 men emerged from a black SUV parked outside, their movements coordinated and purposeful in a way that immediately distinguished them from normal customers. They weren't random street criminals. These were professionals. Jake continued his routine stalking while tracking their approach through the security monitors. All 4 wore dark clothing and moved with the kind of disciplined spacing that suggested military or law enforcement training. More concerning, they positioned themselves to control the store's exits before any of them actually entered. The first man through the door was obviously the leader. Mid-30s, expensive clothing despite the late hour, carrying himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. His 3 companions spread out immediately, one near the front entrance, one by the back exit, one positioning himself where he could watch both the customers and Jake. Jake's training kicked in automatically. 4 subjects, professional coordination, strategic positioning, probable weapons based on their confidence and body language. This wasn't a random robbery. This was an organized operation with specific objectives. The customers hadn't noticed anything yet. Maria was reading a magazine while deciding between different coffee remained brands. Focused on his textbook. Mr. Peterson was still examining cold medicine labels. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their peaceful late-night routine was about to change dramatically. "We need to have a conversation," the leader announced, his voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that made everyone in the store look up immediately. Jake straightened behind the counter, his posture shifting subtly but unmistakably. The relaxed night shift worker was being replaced by someone who radiated controlled awareness and professional competence. "Store hours are posted on the door," Jake replied calmly. "We're open all night. How can I help you?" The leader smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "This is our territory now. We're expanding operations, and this location is strategically important." Jake absorbed this information while conducting his own tactical assessment. The phrase expanding operations, combined with their professional approach, suggested organized crime, rather than simple street gang activity. The reference to strategic importance meant they weren't here just for money. They wanted to establish permanent presence. I see, Jake said quietly. And what does that mean for my customers and my business? It means you work for us now, the leader continued. This store becomes a front for our operations. You take our money, ask no questions, and everybody stays healthy. Maria had gone completely still near the coffee display, recognizing that something dangerous was developing. Tommy looked up from his textbook with growing confusion and concern. Mr. Peterson had stopped pretending to read medicine labels and was clearly trying to figure out whether he should leave or stay frozen. Jake's response was measured and professional. Gentlemen, I appreciate the offer, but this store has operated independently for 8 years. The owner isn't interested in new partnerships. The second man stepped closer to the counter, his jacket shifting to reveal the outline of a concealed weapon. Maybe you don't understand the situation you're in, old man. Jake met his eyes directly. Maybe you don't understand who you're talking to. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Jake's entire presence had shifted, still calm, still controlled, but now radiating the kind of quiet authority that comes from years of training in environments where hesitation meant death. 16 years Marine Force Recon, Jake said conversationally, his hands remaining visible and relaxed on the counter. 3 tours Iraq, 2 Afghanistan. Specialized in what we called urban pacification and hostile territory management. The words hit the 4 men like cold water. The leader's confident expression faltered slightly. His companions exchanged glances that suggested they were beginning to reassess their situation. You're bluffing, the leader said, but his voice carried less conviction than before. Jake shrugged. Feel free to test that theory. But first, let me explain what's going to happen here. The customers had gone completely silent, sensing that the dynamics in the store had shifted dramatically. Maria was edging slowly toward the front entrance. Tommy was staring with wide eyes. Mr. Peterson had carefully moved behind a display rack where he'd be less visible. This store has been my responsibility for 3 years, Jake continued. I've kept it safe, kept the customers safe, kept the neighborhood safe. That's not changing tonight. The third man, who'd been guarding the back exit, moved closer to the counter. There are 4 of us, old man, and we're not impressed by war stories. Jake smiled for the first time since they'd entered. It wasn't a friendly expression. 4 of you, 1 of me. In a contained environment where I know every sight line, every tactical advantage, every improvised weapon within reach. Those actually sound like pretty good odds. The leader was studying Jake with new attention, trying to determine whether the quiet store clerk was actually capable of backing up his implied threats. You're talking about starting a war over a convenience store. I'm talking about protecting my community, Jake corrected. This store serves night shift workers, elderly people who need medicines, students pulling all-nighters. Good people who deserve to feel safe when they shop here. His positioning had shifted almost imperceptibly. Without appearing to move aggressively, Jake had angled himself where he could reach both the emergency alarm and several improvised weapons while maintaining visual contact with all 4 threats. Look around, Jake continued. Mrs. Santos works double shifts at the hospital, saving lives. Tommy's studying engineering so he can build things that help people. Mr. Peterson is 73 years old and just wants his cold medicine. You really want to threaten people like that? The personal details seemed to unsettle the organized crime team more than his military credentials had. These weren't abstract targets. They were individuals with names, stories, reasons to feel safe in their own neighborhood. This doesn't have to be complicated, the leader said, trying to regain control of the conversation. We pay you well. You keep quiet. Everybody benefits. Jake shook his head. That's not how this works. You picked the wrong store, the wrong night, and definitely the wrong person to threaten. The second man's hand moved toward his concealed weapon. Jake's voice cut through the tension like a blade. I wouldn't recommend that. 16 years of experience says you're not fast enough, accurate enough, or prepared enough for what happens next. The standoff stretched for several seconds that felt like hours. 4 professional criminals weighing their options against 1 former Marine who showed no signs of backing down. The silence in the store was absolute except for the quiet hum of refrigeration units, and the distant sound of late-night traffic. Jake reached slowly for the phone behind the counter. "I'm going to call the police now. You can leave voluntarily, or you can explain to detectives why 4 armed men thought threatening a convenience store was good business." "You don't know who you're dealing with," the leader said, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Jake replied calmly. "Mid-level organized crime, probably trying to establish territory for money laundering or drug distribution. Professional enough to coordinate, not experienced enough to properly assess opposition." The clinical accuracy of his assessment seemed to surprise all 4 men. This wasn't a store clerk making lucky guesses. This was someone who understood exactly what they were and what they were trying to accomplish. "We'll be back," the 3rd man said as they began moving toward the exit. Jake's expression didn't change. "No, you won't. Because tomorrow I'll have a conversation with some people I used to work with. They're very good at explaining to organizations like yours why certain locations should remain off-limits." The threat was delivered matter-of-factly, without drama or bluster. The kind of professional courtesy that one expert extends to another when establishing boundaries. The 4 men left without further conversation, their coordinated exit suggesting they'd absorbed the message Jake intended. Through the store windows, Jake watched their SUV disappear into the night, noting the license plate number out of habit. "Is everyone okay?" Jake asked, his voice returning to its normal friendly tone as he checked on his customers. Maria finally found her voice. "Jake, what just happened? Were you really in the Marines?" "Force Recon," Tommy added, still staring at Jake with amazement. "That's like elite special operations." Jake moved around the counter to check on Mr. Peterson, who was still standing behind the display rack. "You all right, sir? Sorry about the excitement." Mr. Peterson looked at Jake with new understanding. "Son, in my 73 years, I've never seen anything like that. You probably saved our lives." "Just doing my job," Jake replied. "This store is supposed to be a safe place for everyone." 20 minutes later, a police car pulled up outside. Jake had called to report the incident, providing detailed descriptions and a license plate number. The responding officers took statements from everyone present, but Jake kept his own account brief and professional. "Prior military?" Officer Davis asked, recognizing something in Jake's demeanor. "Some," Jake confirmed without elaboration. "Well, you handled this exactly right. Kept everyone safe, didn't escalate unnecessarily, gave them a chance to leave peacefully." By 3:30 a.m., the store had returned to its normal late-night rhythm. The police had finished their investigation, the customers had shared their stories and continued their evening routines, and Jake was alone with his responsibilities and his thoughts. His phone buzzed with a text from his old unit commander. "Heard through local law enforcement contacts you had some visitors tonight. Everything's secure." Jake smiled slightly. Even years after leaving active duty, the Marine Brotherhood maintained contact, checking on each other across distance and civilian careers. "All quiet on the retail front," he texted back. "Just keeping the customers safe and the coffee fresh." The response came quickly. "Once a Marine, always a Marine." Outstanding work. Bulldog Jake pocketed his phone and returned to his routine stocking. 3 years ago, when he had first taken this job, he had thought his protective career was finished for good. The Corps had trained him to neutralize threats, complete missions, and move on without hesitation. Life, however, demanded something very different: patience, restraint, and the ability to provide safety without drawing attention. Working a quick-stop market had originally seemed like nothing more than simple, honest work, a chance to fade into the background and serve his community in a small but meaningful way. But tonight had reminded him of a truth he had almost forgotten. Protection could take many forms, and sometimes the most important battles were not fought in distant deserts or hostile cities overseas. Instead, they happened quietly, in familiar places where ordinary people came seeking nothing more than coffee, groceries, or cold medicine at 2 a.m. His Marine training had never truly left him. It had simply adapted to these new surroundings. Every habit, every instinct, every lesson learned under fire was still there, reshaped for civilian life. Instead of protecting fellow Marines, he now protected nurses heading home from long shifts, elderly neighbors buying medicine, and students chasing their dreams late into the night. For Jake, the mission had never really changed: stand between danger and those who could not defend themselves. The uniform was gone, but the calling remained. Instead of protecting fellow Marines in combat zones, he protected customers in their neighborhood store. Instead of conducting operations against international threats, he faced down local criminals who threatened innocent people. The mission remained the same: stand between good people and those who would harm them. Sometimes that meant operating in hostile foreign territories. Sometimes it meant working the night shift at Quick Stop Market. The location changed, but the commitment never did. Jake Bulldog Thompson continued his quiet shift, serving coffee and necessities to anyone who needed a safe place to shop at 3 a.m. Some warriors retired to quiet suburbs, and others found new ways to serve their communities, one customer at a time, one protected night at a time. Have you ever discovered that someone in your community was quietly standing guard in ways you never realized? Share your stories in the comments below, and let us know what city you're watching from today. If this story of quiet protection and unwavering courage resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And don't miss the 2 compelling stories appearing on your screen right now. Click and discover more tales of everyday heroes with extraordinary backgrounds. Because sometimes the most important guardians are the ones working the night shift, keeping our communities safe while we sleep. See you in the next videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe.